Thank you, Carol. Thank you. It's great to be here, or sort of technically here. Just before I start, I just wanted to I look around at all the people that are tuned in. I can see on my page here, Christine Hawkins, Ron and Lorraine Beck, and Jenny, whom I know from Ringwood East. It's great to see people that I know very, very well from the Ringwood East Church, and to let you know and understand that these people are part of that history of that church. Some of these people have served on the committee there for many, many years. I wanted to go back, and I didn't want to dwell too much on historical issues, but you have to sort of let you know how the church came to be. The whole thing started in 1976. Now, that's not when the church started, but in 1976, what happened was that the Tumberton Spiritual Centre, which is up in Upway, organised a public meeting of anyone who was interested in the spiritualist philosophy. That meeting was held in the Ringwood area, and it attracted hundreds of people. And nobody really had any idea of just how enthusiastic people were about the philosophy in that part of Melbourne. And so a little bit of pressure was placed on the VSU, that's how I understand it, but they came to the conclusion that there would be a good reason to build a church, or to have a church. Not to build one, but to have a church out at Ringwood East. And so in 1977, the first meeting was held. The first president was Mr. Richard Overall, who remained president for another 2 years after that. But that was the first spiritualist meeting, was in October of 1977. So that's why the church is 43 years old. We take it from that point. So the new church became known as the Victorian Spiritualist Union Ringwood East Branch. And to my knowledge, it's a bit hazy, but we believe that the first meeting was held in the local Scout Hall, which is behind the Elderly Citizens Centre in Ringwood East. Now, over the years, the church had many homes, but the most stable location was the Elderly Citizens Centre in Lions Grove in Ringwood East. Now, when I first came to that church would have been in the probably mid to late 1980s, and that's where it was. It was in the Elderly Citizen Centre. So that's how I got involved. I don't want to go into how I got involved because that's a story all on its own, but I became vice president late in 1994. And it so happened that in 1995, the then president became ill, and she was away for most of that year, so I became the virtual president because I had to run the church. And when that year was over, some very sad things occurred, but you know the old story, sometimes to make an omelette, you have to break an egg. Well, unfortunately, the then president decided that she wanted to take the church over, remove it from the VSU, and basically she wanted it to become her church, her personal church. Of course, the VSU was not very happy about that. And so there was a bit of a legal dispute about who had the right to occupy the Lawrence Grove Hall, because basically the church at that point split into two. So who had the right to occupy the hall? Well, legally the VSU did, because they'd been in that room for about 10 years up to that point, at least 10 years. But of course, the VSU is a spiritual organisation, and these sort of disputes are not really what you want to get involved with when you're a spiritualist. And so rather than have a drawn-out a legal affair, we decided that the other mob could have the church, could have the building. If they believed that the building was the church, well, then let them have the building. I believed that the church was the people that came to the church. And so if we found new accommodation, those people would come with us. And indeed, that's the way it turned out. We sought new accommodation, and we found it at the Ringwood Room, which was part of the Maroondah Council Ringwood Library complex. Now, that does not exist anymore, because what happened was at Eastland, the shopping centre Eastland, has taken all that over. It was all demolished, and the extension to Eastland is now over and above where that place used to be. In fact, if you walk into Eastland from the Maroondah Highway, where you go down the escalators is round about where it would have been. Yeah, it's almost impossible to it's almost impossible to tell where it is now because it's being just built over. Now the problem then arose that this church, you should understand at that point, was just a Sunday afternoon church. We rented this building for Sunday afternoon services, and that's all we did. It wasn't like the VSU where you had a building where you could have meditation groups and development circles and that sort of stuff. But the president of the VSU at that time was the Reverend Ken Liistro, who had the vision to see that the church had been out there for many, many, many decades as it was, and it probably needed a permanent home. And so a committee was set up, which comprised of Reverend Ken Liistro and Mr. Charlie Christina, myself, and Mr. Michael Weiss, who we still occasionally see on occasion. And that particular group of people was given authority to purchase or build suitable accommodation for the branch church. Now, I can tell you that we looked around for a long, long time. It seemed years. And we were getting very, very tired of just looking at properties that weren't really suitable. And in the end, what happened was that one of the local real estate agents who knew what we were after said to us, "Do you mind if I find a place for you? I'll see if I can find a place for you." So we said, "Go right ahead. Do the best you can." What he did was to letterbox all the streets around the Ringwood East station, because he knew that we wanted to be in the Ringwood East area and as close to the station as possible, so that people were able to commute to the church. And lo and behold, we had a taker at 51 Patterson Street, Ringwood East. And all there was on this beautiful quarter-acre, you can imagine in Ringwood East, the blocks are very large. The proper quarter-acre blocks. And all there was on this quarter-acre block was a very, very old weatherboard home that really needed to be pulled down. It was so bad. So we really purchased the place for the price of the block, because the house is really, you needed money to pull it down. You're going to spend money. And so we bought this place. That's 51 Patterson Street, Ringwood East, which is where the church is located now. We proposed to demolish the old house and erect a new building, designed specifically for the purpose of being a spiritualist church. Now, there are not too many buildings in Australia that were designed and built from the ground up to be spiritualist churches. The only other one I know of is the Brunswick Spiritualist Church. A company by the name of Brace Constructions won the tender, and after a meeting with a subcommittee, he commenced building the building. Now, I should say something about Brace Constructions, because the fellow who owned this company was a really, really, really nice person. I mean, you hear all sorts of stories about builders, but this fellow was just marvellous. Not only was he very enthusiastic about building the church, and that's what I wanted. I wanted somebody with enthusiasm, but he also made some key modifications to because I actually designed the church. I designed the floor plan and what it was basically to look like. But he made some minor corrections, and one of them was to incorporate a storeroom. So those of you who know the Ringwood East Church, that storeroom was not my idea. That hallway used to go and lead to a blank wall. And this fellow said, well, why have a blank wall? So we took some room out of the male toilets and put a door there, and now we have a storeroom. But that was, and he had some great ideas about the ceiling in the main hall. That ceiling, suspended ceiling, is his idea. Is a great person, really wonderful person to work with. So we're very, very fortunate in that regard. The building, the car park and the gardens were finished in early October of 1998. Now, I should mention that as part of the process of getting the plans approved, of course, we had to do that with the council. And I'm a technologist. I'm not a clerk or a clerk, and I don't understand local councils and the way they work. And they sent me this thing that said, you know, they wanted a planning proposal, they called it. Now, what's a planning proposal? I don't know what a planning proposal is. I had some idea by the letter, but it just so happened at the time, now you can call this coincidence, or you can call it the universe stepping in. But one of the ladies who's come to the church had married a gentleman who used to be on the planning board of one of the councils in another area. And of course, he knew exactly what a planning proposal was. And she said to me, I'll put it in his hands. And she rang me up a day later and he said, he's agreed to do it, you'll have it within 2 weeks. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, I had this 20-page planning proposal, all written out in council speak, because they have their own language, councils. I don't know whether you know that or not, but you have to know council speak, otherwise you will not get very, very far. Well, he wrote it in council speak. And he said to me, there you are, give it to them, you'll never hear from them again on this issue. And true enough, we never did. The planning proposal went through, I never heard about this document again. So that was great. So if that's not the universe coming through and fixing up a problem that it would have been a problem, but ended up not being a problem. But anyway, we finished the building in October of 1998. And on the 10th of the 10th, all you numerologist people should note that date, the 10th of the 10th, 1/1, 1998. We had the opening ceremony, which was attended by 120 people. And the first spiritualist service was held on the following day, because the 10th of the 10th is actually a Saturday. So we opened the church on a Saturday to allow people from all the churches to come and be part of the opening of a brand new spiritualist church. And we thought it was very, very important that people from other churches were able to come along, and they did. So the first spiritualist service was held on the very following day, on the 11th of October of 1998. So we had a new building. Now, the committee was very, very keen to start group activities. Now, you understand that before this, we were just a Sunday afternoon church. Now, all of a sudden, we had this building. Well, you've got to utilise it. You can't just use it on a Sunday afternoon. So with the first two groups, what we felt were the two most important groups that we needed to start running. And the first one was the Friday morning healing group. Okay? And to that, the Tuesday night meditation group, which is still running to this day. Now, spiritualists will give a very high priority to healing, not only because of the service it provides to other people, but because it makes people more sensitive to spiritual energies. It's a way of growth. And here I need to pay tribute to the vice president of that time, a truly remarkable woman. And I'm talking about Thelma Milner, and I'm sure a lot of you will know. Thelma, if you've been part of the Ringwood East Church for any length of time, she left in 2006, but she'd been vice president for quite a while. Now, Thelma was with us when we were searching for our permanent home. She was there when we decided to purchase the block of land. She was there for all the planning phases of the building, and she was also there when we officially opened the building on that 10th of the 10th in 1998. And soon after the opening of the building, Thelma started the Friday morning healing group. And she ran that group for 8 years, right up to her retirement from the committee in 2006. And what I want to say is that Thelma was a very, very special person, a very intelligent woman, very intelligent. But with that, very caring, a very, very caring touch that allowed people to remain relaxed whilst they shared stories of illness, healing, or just to talk on spiritual matters. Many people gain great benefit by attending that Friday morning healing group, and I'm very sure that group is still running to this very day. But Thelma will always be remembered because she was part of what made Ringwood East what it was in those days, and what it continues to be, because that energy that she put into that church will never go away, will always be there. The other group we started up was the meditation group. Now, spiritualists believe that the ability to meditate is fundamental to any spiritual practice. And because we believe that people come to understand our philosophy very much through personal experiences, one of the ways to get personal experiences is through meditation. It's a self-revelation. So meditation, quite apart from providing you with healing, which it will do, I can vouch for that because I'm one of those who had great benefit from it. That's why I originally ended up in spiritualism, because of the meditation side of it. It is a very, very important tool, and I cannot stress that enough. If you want spiritual growth, you must learn to meditate. It is as important as reading is. When you learn to read, you imagine how important reading is to all the things that you do later on in life. Without reading, it's almost impossible to learn and to grow. So reading is a fundamental thing. In spiritual practices, meditation has that same value. It is the basis on which other things are built on. So meditation is it is a powerful healing tool, but very importantly, it will open you up to the energies of the universe. And once that happens, anything is possible, really. Development circles, healing groups, personal revelation through your own personal experiences. Very, very important. So soon after that, we started opening up some development circles. So Maureen Ockenden, those of you who know Maureen, a medium who I think is still on platform, I'm not sure. She ran the Monday night circle, and Michael Weiss ran the Wednesday night circle. Now, as time went on, of course, other circles were added, but that was later in the game. There we go. Okay. I want to mention this because when we opened up the church, we went through and had a ceremony for the church. There was a lot of speakers. But one of the important things that we did was to pray for the church, to pray to this thing that we call the Great Spirit of the universe. And one of the prayers that was read on that day, I was just reading through the service just a few days ago, and I thought, no, I need to share this with people. And this is one of the prayers that was read out by Thelma Milner, our Vice President, on that day. She read out a prayer from Silverbirch, dedicating the church and all who work within its walls to the service, underlying service, of the Great Spirit of the universe. So I think it's very appropriate that I'll read that prayer today. Before I do that, For those who are new to our philosophy, and I know there are some new people, you may not be aware of who Silver Birch is. When I say Silver Birch, who is this? So allow me to explain very briefly. Silver Birch was the spirit guide of a man named Maurice Barbanel. Silver Birch spoke through Maurice Barbanel, and the philosophy that came through this pair came to be compiled into books. And those books, over time, have sort of formed a standard text for those wishing to study the philosophy of spiritualism. Silver Birch has a way of using simple words to convey very complex messages. You look at the words and what he says, they are very, very deep indeed, and yet in words that we can all understand. Please note, for the new ones, that we do not in any way worship Silver Birch. We regard him as a great teacher. That's what he is, a great teacher, a servant of the Great Spirit. We worship only the Great Spirit of the universe whom we call God. That should be known to all spiritualists. So let me read this prayer. O Great Spirit, we approach you, the fountainhead of all life, seeking to establish a closer union with the power that has fashioned all of us in its own divine image and which holds all of humanity in its embrace of love. We recognise that thou art the Great Spirit whom we call God, and because thou art infinite, we cannot comprehend all of thy majesty. Neither can we understand the fullness of thy supremacy. But we do recognise that throughout all of the universe, in all its infinite manifestations, thy natural law reigns supreme, and that the whole of what is called visible and invisible is regulated by natural law, which is unchanging, inflexible, and inexorable. Nothing happens by accident. All is due to the divine design which has made provision and regulates all facets of activity. We marvel at and pay tribute to the constancy of this law, which overlooks none and throughout all time continues ceaselessly to work according to the pattern which infinite intelligence has devised and infinite wisdom sustains. It is part of our task to make the operation of this law more understandable to those prepared to receive the knowledge, so that the scales might fall from their eyes, so that their ears and hearts may become open and their souls flooded with the illumination which comes from knowing the great truths which will teach all peoples the purpose of their being and make them realise they are the part they have to play in their own lives. By doing this, we will help to abolish darkness, ignorance, selfishness, evil, chaos, bloodshed and misery, which are the foul outcomes in a world of matter and which owe their origin to materialistic selfishness. To this noble cause we pledge ourselves. This, O Great Spirit, that infinite intelligence which we call God. This is our prayer. And that's from Silver Birch. So on this day that we celebrate the anniversary of Ringwood East, to all those at Ringwood East, to all those people who have worked so hard, including the current people who are working hard to keep Ringwood East alive and working well. I will give you these final words from Silver Birch, remembering who we are, what we actually are. We, all of us who work for this philosophy, we are all servants of the Great Spirit. It is an honour to be of service. Thank you.